She was 68 years old, wore soft cardigans and a silver cross around her neck, and every Sunday she baked apple pie for the church potluck. No one in Columbus, Ohio would ever have guessed that on weekday afternoons, while her husband was at the senior center playing cards, her own stepson dragged her by the hair across the kitchen floor, slammed her head against the same oven where the pies cooled, and whispered, "Scream, and I'll put Lily in the ground next." That was the day Eleanor Thompson learned the true meaning of family, and the day she decided some secrets are too heavy to die with. House No. 47 on Maple Street looked like every other tidy suburban home: white vinyl siding, a neat lawn, flower boxes under the windows, blooming with petunias in summer and evergreens in winter, and a small American flag on the porch that fluttered gently in the breeze. Neighbors smiled and waved as they walked their dogs or mowed their lawns. "Such a sweet family," they would say, recalling the Thompsons' annual backyard barbecues, or how Eleanor always had a kind word for the mailman. Little did they know that behind those lace curtains and the scent of fresh baked goods, a nightmare unfolded daily. One that had been building for years like a storm cloud on the horizon. Inside the house, the air was thick with unspoken tension. The living room, with its floral patterned sofa and shelves, lined with family photos from happier times, felt more like a stage set for a tragedy. Eleanor Thompson, at 68, was the matriarch. Known to everyone as Grandma Ellie, her days were filled with small routines that kept her grounded: knitting scarves for charity, tending to her herb garden in the backyard, and reading her Bible by the window where the afternoon light filtered through like a promise of peace. She had married Harold 25 years ago, after his first wife died of cancer, and she had stepped into the role of stepmother to his then 20-year-old son, Marcus, with all the love she could muster. But love, she had learned, wasn't always enough. Harold Thompson, 70 now, was a retired mechanic who had spent 40 years under the hoods of cars. At the local garage, his hands were still calloused, his back a little stooped from years of bending over engines. He spent his retirement tinkering in the garage with old radios or watching the news on the old tube TV, grumbling about politics and the state of the world. He was a good man, steady and reliable, but oblivious to the shadows creeping through his own home. His days out at the senior center playing cards, sharing stories with old buddies, left the house empty of his presence. And that's when the darkness descended. Marcus, 45, was the storm at the center of it all. Tall and broad-shouldered, with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow and eyes that could turn cold in an instant. He had once been a promising young man, but life had chipped away at him. A failed marriage, a string of dead-end jobs, and now unemployment. After the factory shut down 6 months ago, he lounged on the couch most days, scrolling through his phone, nursing grudges like old wounds. The layoff had been the tipping point, turning his simmering resentment into outright rage. He blamed everyone his father for not helping more, Eleanor for replacing his mother, and Sophia for being the perfect daughter who had it all together until she didn't. Sophia, 39, was Eleanor's biological daughter from her first marriage, which had ended in divorce when Sophia was young. She had moved back home 2 years ago after her own divorce from a man who had promised the world but delivered only heartbreak. Sophia worked as a librarian at the public library downtown, surrounded by books that offered escapes she desperately needed. She was slim, with Eleanor's blue eyes and a quiet strength that masked her fragility. Her 11-year-old daughter, Lily, was the light of her life, a bright, curious girl with pigtails and a love for drawing unicorns and reading chapter books. Lily spent her days at school or with friends, but when she was home, she sensed the tension like a dog before a thunderstorm. The abuse hadn't started all at once. It crept in like ivy on a fence, subtle at first, then choking everything in its path. It began with words, sharp, cutting remarks that left invisible scars. Marcus would mutter under his breath about Eleanor's useless hobbies or Sophia's failed life. "You're just leeching off, Dad," he'd say to Sophia, his voice laced with venom. To Eleanor, it was, "You think you're the queen of this house? You're nothing but a stand-in," Harold, when he was around, dismissed it as family bickering, too tired from his day to dig deeper. But words gave way to actions. The first physical incident happened on a rainy afternoon in late spring. Eleanor was in the kitchen, humming an old hymn as she peeled apples for pie. Marcus stormed in, his face twisted in frustration after another rejected job application. "You told Dad I wasn't pulling my weight, didn't you?" he accused, though she hadn't said a word. Before she could respond, he grabbed her arm, twisting it behind her back. Pain shot through her shoulder like fire. She gasped, dropping the peeler. "Please, Marcus," she whispered. He shoved her against the counter, the edge digging into her hip. "Shut up, old woman." The bruise formed quickly, a dark purple bloom on her pale skin. She covered it with a cardigan and told Harold she had slipped on the wet floor. Sophia found out that evening. She was helping set the table when she noticed her mother wincing. "Mom, what happened?" Eleanor waved it off, but Sophia persisted, pulling up the sleeve to reveal the mark. Tears welled in Sophia's eyes. "He did this, didn't he?" Eleanor nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "It's just stress from being out of work. He'll get better." Sophia hugged her, but inside a seed of fear took root. As the weeks passed, the incidents multiplied. Marcus's unemployment checks weren't enough, and his frustration boiled over daily. He started isolating them, closing the blinds during the day so neighbors couldn't see in. The house, once filled with laughter from Lily's playdates, became a fortress of fear. One evening while Harold was at a veterans meeting, Marcus cornered Sophia in the laundry room. She was folding clothes, trying to ignore his looming presence. "You think you're so much better than me, don't you? With your fancy library job?" His hand shot out, grabbing her by the throat and pinning her against the dryer. She clawed at his arm, gasping for air. "Stop, please!" He released her with a shove, leaving red marks on her neck. "Tell anyone, and I'll make sure you regret it." Eleanor heard the commotion and rushed in, her heart pounding. "Marcus, no! Leave her alone!" He turned on her, his fist connecting with her side. She crumpled to the floor, ribs aching. The three of them, Eleanor, Sophia, and later Lily, who peeked in wide-eyed, sat in silence afterward, the weight of the secret pressing down like a stone. The pattern established itself firmly over the summer. Harold's routine kept him out most afternoons, senior center on Mondays and Wednesdays, fishing with friends on Tuesdays, doctor's appointments on Thursdays. He came home to dinner on the table and smiles that had the truth. Marcus waited until the truck pulled away before unleashing hell. Some days, it was verbal abuse, berating them for every perceived slight. Other days, it was physical slaps that left welts, pushes that caused falls, grabs that bruised tender skin. For Eleanor, the abuse targeted her age and frailty. Marcus would mock her trembling hands as she poured coffee, then knock the cup from her grip. Hot liquid scalding her lap. Clumsy old bat, he'd laugh. She spent hours in the bathroom, applying salve to burns and hiding marks with makeup she hadn't used in years. Her faith kept her going. She prayed nightly for strength, clutching her silver cross like a lifeline. But doubt crept in. Why would God allow this in her own home? Sophia suffered the worst of it. Marcus's attacks on her were more intimate, more violating. He would wait until Eleanor was in the garden or napping, then force Sophia into the basement, the door locked behind them. There, in the dim light among boxes of old Christmas decorations, he would hurt her, pushing her down, his hands roaming where they shouldn't, his threats ensuring her silence. "You're nothing without this family," he'd say. "Who would believe a divorced failure like you?" Sophia would emerge shaking, fixing her clothes, forcing a smile for Lily. At work, surrounded by stories of heroes and happy endings, she felt like a character in a horror novel. Lily, the innocent bystander, absorbed it all like a sponge. At 11, she was old enough to notice, but too young to understand fully. She saw the bruises her mother tried to hide, heard the muffled cries from downstairs. One night, she woke to arguing and crept to the stairs. Seeing Marcus towering over Grandma Ellie, his hand raised. Lily's small voice called out, "Stop!" Marcus's whirled, his face a mask of fury, but he lowered his hand that time. Later, Sophia tucked her back in, whispering, "It's just grown-up stuff, sweetie. Go to sleep." But Lily didn't sleep. She drew pictures of monsters under her bed, their faces looking suspiciously like Uncle Marcus. As fall approached, the abuse escalated. Marcus started drinking more, empty beer cans littering the living room. His rages became unpredictable. One particularly bad day, after a job interview gone wrong, he found Eleanor and Sophia in the kitchen preparing dinner. Lily was at a friend's house, thankfully. "You two are the reason my life is shit," he slurred, advancing on them. Eleanor stood protectively in front of Sophia. "Marcus, please. Let's talk." He laughed, a bitter sound, and grabbed Eleanor's hair, yanking her head back. She cried out as he dragged her across the tile floor, her knees scraping. Sophia lunged to help, but he shoved her away, her head hitting the cabinet with a thud. He slammed Eleanor's head against the oven door, same oven where her famous apple pies baked every Sunday. Stars exploded in her vision, pain radiating through her skull. "Scream, and I'll put Lily in the ground next," he whispered, his breath reeking of alcohol. Sophia, dazed but determined, pulled him off, scratching his arm. He turned on her, punching her in the stomach, leaving her gasping. The two women huddled together on the floor long after he stormed out, sobbing quietly. "We can't go on like this," Sophia whispered. Eleanor nodded, her resolve hardening. "No, we can't." That night, as Harold snored in the recliner, Eleanor slipped into Sophia's room at 2 a.m. The house was silent except for the tick of the grandfather clock downstairs. "Tomorrow we go to the police," she said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. Sophia sat up, eyes wide. "Mom, what about Dad?" "The neighbors? Everyone will know. I'm already the divorced mom. They'll say I'm making it up for attention." Eleanor took her daughter's hands. "Let them talk until their tongues fall off. My daughter and granddaughter deserve to live without fear. We've kept this secret too long. It's killing us." The next morning dawned crisp and clear, the kind of Ohio autumn day that promised change. As soon as Harold's old Ford pickup rumbled down the street toward the senior center, Eleanor and Sophia got ready. They dropped Lily at school, telling her nothing unusual, then drove downtown to the Columbus Police Department's Domestic Violence Unit. The building was unassuming, a gray structure amid the bustle of the city. But to them, it represented hope. Detective Maria Ramirez met them in a small interview room that smelled of coffee and paperwork. She was in her 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor honed from years on the job. "Tell me everything," she said, notepad ready. Eleanor started, her voice steady at first, then breaking as she recounted the months of torment. Sophia added details, lifting her shirt to show fresh bruises. Ramirez listened without interruption, her expression a mix of empathy and professionalism. She photographed every mark, the old yellowing ones on Eleanor's arms, the fresh red welts on Sophia's neck. "We'll need forensic exams," she explained, arranging for them at the nearby hospital. By afternoon, the report was filed. Charges of assault, battery, and child endangerment pending. That evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange, 3 patrol cars pulled into the cul-de-sac. Neighbors peeked from windows, phones in hand. Marcus was in the living room watching TV when the knock came. He opened the door to uniforms and badges. "Marcus Thompson, you're under arrest," he resisted, screaming obscenities, calling Eleanor and Sophia liars out to ruin him. The officers cuffed him on the front lawn, his struggles captured on half a dozen cell phones. As they drove him away, the street buzzed with whispers. Harold returned home to KS police tape, neighbors gossiping, his wife and daughter pale but resolute. When they told him the truth, his face crumpled. "How could I not see?" he muttered, clutching his chest. He collapsed in the driveway, the paramedics arriving just in time to rush him to Riverside Methodist Hospital with a massive heart attack. The following days were a whirlwind. Harold survived, but the shock aged him overnight. He lay in the hospital bed, tubes snaking from his arms, listening as Eleanor explained everything. Tears streamed down his face. "I failed you all." Eleanor held his hand. "We all kept silent too long, but it's over now." The trial dragged on for 9 months, a grueling process that tested their strength. The courtroom in the Franklin County Courthouse was cold and impersonal, with wooden benches and fluorescent lights that buzzed overhead. Prosecutors presented medical reports detailing fractured ribs, dislocated shoulders, and psychological trauma. Photographs of bruises were enlarged for the jury, each one a silent testament to the horror. Lily, brave beyond her years, took the stand, her small voice steady as she recounted what she had seen. "Uncle Marcus hurt Mommy and Grandma," she said, clutching a stuffed bear. The defense lawyer tried smears. Isn't it convenient that this comes out after Marcus lost his job? A bitter family dispute, perhaps? The judge, a stern woman named Judge Harlan, shut it down. Stick to the evidence. Neighbors testified too. One had saved. Ring doorbell footage showing Marcus's aggressive outbursts in the driveway. The jury deliberated for 2 days before returning guilty verdicts on multiple counts. Marcus was sentenced to 14 years in state prison, his face ashen as the gavel fell. Life after the trial was a slow rebuild. Harold came home silent and broken, spending days in therapy to process his guilt. He never mentioned Marcus again, removing his photos from the shelves. The house transformed, windows stayed open, letting in fresh air and sunlight that chased away the shadows. Eleanor, with a cane for her hip, joined a support group for survivors, her faith renewed. She baked pies not just for church, but for the women's shelter downtown, sharing her story to help others. Sophia flourished, enrolling in an online master's program in library science, dreaming of opening a community reading center. She dated cautiously, her trust rebuilding brick by brick. Lily, with counseling, turned her drawings from monsters to rainbows, her laughter filling the home once more. One spring afternoon, as daffodils bloomed in the yard, Lily skipped into the kitchen where Eleanor was kneading dough. "Grandma, are we safe now?" Eleanor knelt despite the ache in her hip and hugged the girl. "Yes, baby. We're finally safe, and we'll make sure no one else has to live like that." This is not just Eleanor, Sophia, and Lily's story. It is the story of every American home where a grandmother, mother or daughter is imprisoned behind the lie of keeping the family together, where bruises are explained away with "I walked into a door," where screams are swallowed so the neighbors won't hear. If you are living this nightmare, remember, silence is the abuser's greatest weapon. Speak, reach out. Call or text the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 180-0799-7233 SAFE, or text START to 88,788. You are not alone. Your life matters.